said something because there we
There
all
we
right.
go.
So
Namo Midabutsu.
I'm on meeting. Naman David.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
Likewise.
Yes. So, I want to continue our discussion from last time. I had a huge something really crystallized, and I feel like another barrier got loosened during that last discussion when I had time to reflect deeply afterward. Um, whenever I say reflecting deeply, I'm always, in my mind, it's, Amida's light, Amida's power, enabling that reflection always. But anyway, when I reflected on listened to the recording later, really something really crystallized. So I have been aware for a long time about the sincere and trusting kind of mind, the simple faith, the aspiration to be born, for birth in Pure Land, and all of that in Shinjin, in the arising and settling of Shinjin, comes from the Buddha mind, comes from Amida, comes from Amida's, merit transference and light and vow power and all of that. And his mind, literally his mind. And so I've been aware of that last time, but it really, previously I've been aware of this for some time, but it's the way you worded what you worded in the last session about the kind of, I'm paraphrasing here, but the two minds, the mind of the, in settled Shinjin, one thought moment kind of the Shinjin, the Buddha, there's the Buddha mind and there's the Bamboo mind. And, really at that point, all that really matters is what comes from the Bamboo mind, or sorry, what comes from from the Buddha mind, as far as, you know, uh, what occurs to you from the Bamboo mind is just going to be the same as it kind of ever was to some extent. I think there is some transformation there, in the sense of, the Bamboo mind is that, in Shinjin finally becomes itself, finally becomes the true Bamboo, and we really see what we are, in Shinjin. We truly see who and what we are as a Bumbu, the depth of our ignorance, the depth of our karmic evil, the depth of our desires and our aversions. We really see it, for just kind of bear to us within, obviously our own karmic causes and, karmic causes, conditions, and limitations. But so there is a transformation there in Shinjin of the Bamboo mind, but, finally becoming none other than its, own self. you know. But what you said, I just thought was really kind of insightful, and it really crystallized that whole idea that what's really important is what's coming from the Buddha mind, and what's coming from the Bamboo mind, as ever, is a load of garbage, including, well, my the bear I've been talking about, in previous episodes and in our last discussion, um, of that skeptical, so-called rational, I put that in major quotes, so-called rational, skeptical, naturalistic universe, absurd, pessimistic, philosophical outlook, nothing more, closed system, no spirituality or spiritual dimension to anything, just the cold universe is doing what it does. And I get into that mindset, and, you know, once a month, it seems like, almost, or once a week, but definitely once a month, at a, almost like a monthly cycle, as I was
Mhm.
joking about, previously. But anyway, so that but so what you said really crystallized something where it doesn't obviously alter that, doesn't
Mm.
give you, because in the skeptical mind state, you're going to be going, oh yeah, the Buddha mind, huh? The Buddha mind's going to fix everything, huh? Do you know what I mean? You're going to be, you're going to, you're going to have that skeptical, cynical thing. But when I'm in that mind state, but in the Dharma stream, in the Dharma mindset, that was huge. What I realized later in my reflection later, it was huge, really crystallized and really, I feel like moved a big chunk of the debris in the channels of faith through, again, all this happening through Amita's, working, but and through through our deep dialogue, um, an honest dialogue over the hedge, over the top, speak up, get it done kind of dialogue. It really crystallized that for me, that it's the two different minds, and they're one in Shinjin, but we're still Bamboo, and it's still a Buddha mind. And but the Buddha mind is the important key aspect of it. So what I'd like to focus on in this session, though, is the Buddha mind side of it, if we can. And I just had some thoughts about that, so I'd like to one also read the. It reminded me during that last session, the whole time I was thinking of the definition of Shinjin in the Shinran works, collected works of Shinran. Um, Books and website, obviously. And I'd like to read that because I think it kind of, all the teachings, so many different teachings of Shinran are condensed so well in that definition. And it definitely kind of speaks to what you were discussing last week, what I'm saying here. So that's one thing.
Mhm.
And then there's another aspect of it that I want to talk about, that a kind of mind model that comes from, as you know, for my gluttony, my food addiction in the past, I've used different uh, addiction recovery modalities or recovery programs or whatever you want to call it, and taken bits and pieces of those and been able, and I definitely think all those groups and all those methodologies were definitely used as an upaya, for the Dharma, through, for, upaya of Amida, to bring me
Mhm.
around to a better understanding of Buddhism and of even Jodo Shinshu in so many different ways. It's amazing, and this is another one of those aspects. I'm like, wow, that sounds just like the model in this one particular. It's the life ring uh, addiction recovery program that I want to talk about, because it really kind of illustrates what kind of needs to happen, or what's the important thing in a kind of roughly analogous way. But anyway, so yeah, you did you want to come in though and
Let's,
say some things? Yeah. Or do you want to
yeah,
read?
I mean, I'll keep it very brief now just because we're
Yeah.
strapped for time and I want to get to the thing. Just that I wouldn't dignify, I mean, you've already qualified that, but I wouldn't dignify that kind of doubt, that radical doubt as being rational, because I think it
Yeah,
doesn't actually come from a
exactly.
place
Yeah.
of rationality. think it comes from a place of fear.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's an emotional response. So, because I was going to say, Descartes has this argument for, you can't doubt your own existence because otherwise who's doing the doubting? You could doubt that. There's nothing stopping the thought, well, what if I'm not real, from arising, and then entertaining that kind of fear. You know what I mean? So it's those things just happen. They're not rational. I wouldn't call them rational. I think it's just we have like this modern prejudice against
Yeah.
jnanic kind of thought, but anyway, as opposed to rational thought. But anyway, let's get to the
No.
definition.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And we also, I mean, in Buddhism, part of that fear is kind of, if you really internalize Buddhism a bit, the teachings, to whatever limited way you can within your own karmic causes and limitations, internalize it. But part of it is, yeah, I'm not
Mm.
real.
Mm. Yeah,
It's
well,
not
yeah,
real.
yeah.
I'm not, it's a dream. It's all a delusory, kind of, dream that I've created for myself through my own
Mm,
karma,
mm, mm,
through
mm,
my own ignorance. So anyway, but the other part is fear. In fact, in my description that I read to you, or in my that little
mm,
write up I
mm,
did
mm,
to
mm,
express this
mm,
to
mm.
you via, that the private messenger, and I read that in the last episode. I said, one of the first things I said, I fear that
Mm.
This is the way the universe is. That's the first, and it is a fear. And then the other part of the fear is I fear that all this other stuff, that I've been, used in life, including Buddhism, is just a way to cope, and Yoda Shinshu being the ultimate cope, a really well developed and perfect one, but still a cope. And it's a fear that that's the case. It's a fear. So it's a very insightful point that you make about that. So rather than being a rational, it's almost a primal, fear in a sense for me. But yeah, because it does go right to the core, and it is the core doubt. Anyway, or core barrier, what have you. So right, so let me share my screen. First, I just want to I need to get rid of something else here first. And there we go. Get that out of the way, and then. Oh, sorry, I lost my place. Sorry about this. Unscripted, unrehearsed, teleprompter free here at the Gankai channel. And just getting that, just looking for here, I'll just share my screen actually, and you can watch me find it. Where is there it is. Okay. Share my screen. There it is. Thank you. Okay. Can you see? Do you
Yes,
see? All right.
I do see.
Excellent. So just need to find, I'm not going to look for it that way because if you put Shinjin in, it's like
Yeah, it's
obviously
every
going to be
page. Yeah.
10,000. So I'm just going to go down through the alphabet to the actual because it actually is a separate entry. So under the S's, obviously. Okay, with the R's, good. Getting there, getting there, getting there.
And there we go.
Did we pass it? Did I get
I
it?
think we went past it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we passed it. There we go. Yeah,
Yeah.
Shinjin. So, right, quickly read this, and then we'll from here. Right. So, Shinjin, one's entrusting to Amida's primal vow, which is at the same time the negation of one's calculative thinking, very important, brought about by Amida's working, also part of that transformation I was talking about, calculative, the negation of calculative thinking. And I think in negation, it's an important word there, but
Mhm.
anyway. It denotes the central religious experience of Shinjin. Sorry, it denotes the central religious experience of Shin Buddhism and literally means man's true, real, and sincere heart and mind, which is given by Amida Buddha. This heart mind has basically two aspects: a non-dichotomous identity wherein the heart and mind of Amida and the heart and mind of the practitioner are one, and a dichotomous relationship wherein the two are mutually exclusive and in dynamic interaction. Used as an adjective, used as an adjective, Shin, which is different from the term Shin Buddhism, has the meaning of true, real, and sincere. As a verb, it means to entrust oneself to the Buddha, an act which is made possible by the working of the true, real, and sincere heart and mind of Amida Buddha. These two meanings are always inseparable. Thus, while Shinjin is experienced by human beings, its source, contents, and consummation are to be found not in one, but in Buddha. There are 2 points to be noted concerning the oneness that Shinjin signifies. First, it is not a simple identity. According to Shinran, the mind of Amida Buddha is true, real, and sincere, while the minds of foolish beings are empty and transitory. Since empty means not real and not sincere, transitory means not true. notes on Essentials of Faith alone. Shinjin is a oneness of that which is true and real with its exact opposite. They are one and yet two. They are two and yet one. To express the structure of this oneness philosophically, the mind of the foolish being and the mind of Amida are identical, and at the same time they stand in opposition of mutual exclusion and negation, of truth and reality versus emptiness and transience. In religious terms, the oneness of Shinjin expresses the working of great compassion, but as wisdom, taking persons of evil. Bear with me a sec. Just gonna. In religious terms, the oneness of Shinjin expresses the working of great compassion, Buddha's wisdom, taking persons of evil, foolish beings possessed of blind passions, into itself, never to abandon them. The second point concerning the oneness of Shinjin is that it lies at the heart. The second point concerning the oneness of Shinjin is that it lies at the heart of Shinran's Buddhism, for it signifies the attainment of Buddhahood. Shinran's teaching then is not one of salvation through faith, for Shinjin is not a means to salvation, but salvation itself.
Mm.
Its centrality can be seen in Shinran's emphasis on other power, which means to be free of any form of calculation, lamp of the latter ages. When one is free of self-power, the self-centered working of one's intellect will to achieve enlightenment. This freedom of one's own heart and mind from self-power is itself other power. In other words, other power is the Buddha's power that has become one's own as Shinjin. It is the power of the heart and mind of the person in whom self-power falls away and disappears as oneness with the Buddha's mind is realized. In the realization of Shinjin, one becomes a foolish being, Bambu, for the first time, in that one awakens to one's own true nature, but simultaneously one attains Buddhahood that will be fully realized through the working of Jin and Ani. This complex structure of Shinjin is expressed in a number of important concepts. For example, since the oneness in Shinjin means that persons of Shinjin have attained the Buddha's mind, which is itself Buddhahood, that is to be fully realized at the moment karmic bonds are severed at the end of life, Shinran states that they are the equal of Tathagatas. Equal does not mean identical, but points also to remaining differences. A Tathagata is completely free of blind passions, but persons of Shinjin are not. Nevertheless, the structure of Shinjin is such that while they are human beings, they are also Tathagata, Buddha, for they live by the Buddha's mind of their power. Boom. Namo Mirabutsu. Namo Mirabutsu. I love that. It's huge. And that expresses a lot of different things, obviously, but I thought that definitely speaks to what you were talking about in the last session.
Mm-hmm.
It also shows a lot of transformation there of the Bambu mind, not just realizing its own bamboo-ness, but there's many other things going on there that are huge, very special, something very special transformations happening there. So anyway, we have about 6 minutes, so go, please share your thoughts or if you want to focus on anything in this that we just went over.
Yeah, it's the what's very interesting is the discussing it shin as an adjective and a verb, which because there, I mean it's interesting, right? Because there's this sort of simultaneity in what's going on there, right? Like you're shinning the shin, You're entrusting in that which is there's actually a great phrase in classical Chinese which it's xin 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 ye, which and that xin 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 is Shin, the same Shin as Shinjin, which is and it means true trustworthiness is trustworthy indeed. Um, I'm going off
Yeah,
on a bit of a tangent
yeah.
there, but it's that doesn't come from a Buddhist, by the way. That's from like a heretical Confucian. But I think it expresses very nicely
Buddhism in
what
disguise.
yeah, yeah.
Maybe.
But it expresses very, very nicely the idea that that which is true and real is the only thing that you can really rely on. Um, and once you have that, that forms this sort of ultimate foundation for life because it's this rock bottom that you can rely on. I'm going off on a bit of a tangent there, but that's one thing that comes to me.
Sure.
And
Well,
the other thing
what
which
you
I
were
just
just saying there too, also speak, a phrase that you used last week was a truth that insists on itself, that shinning the
mm,
shit.
mm,
I thought of when you said last week, and some of different things that were the way it was worded in here, how you put it last week, the last session was, it's a truth that insists on itself. It's a truth that becomes itself. The truth, do you see what I mean?
yeah, yeah, yeah. It affirms itself in your own mind, and your own sort of internal effort to deny it just can't silence it, right? So even with that the sort of radical doubt in the form of these fears, right? And there that doesn't silence this voice which says the contrary, right? And to shin in the sense of the verb is to trust in that voice because that's the one that the one which affirms, which insists, because that's what I mean that's what entrusting is, right? And that's what uh what's entrusting and what's reliable. I don't think I'm being very articulate right now, but I hope that makes sense. And also that's why I like the word faith as a translation, because that I mean, that speaks to my experience in
Yeah.
this regard. Um, yeah. Um, I just also thought, since we have a couple of minutes, it just linguistically it might be interesting when it talks about non-duality there, because we talked about that a little earlier. And I understand for very good reason people who are in which I include myself, people who are anxious about orthodoxy within English speaking Shin, get antsy around oneness as a concept because that's not, sort of fuzzily defined and often it leads to sort of conceptual slippage. But I thought what was articulated really well here is that the Chinese literally reads not one, not two. So it's not,
Hmm.
when it says not two, it's not dual, but it's also not it's not unitary,
Yeah.
right? It's not
Yeah.
one. Um,
Yeah.
but bu e bu r. So it's yeah.
Definitely comes in there. Something I want to say really quickly. Sorry about my puppies
Oh
barking.
no no.
Here, let me just let them out. Something I wanted to say um, was something else I wanted to say was about this whole subject we're kind of talking about here, and the truth that insists upon itself, or shinning the shin. It's There's so many times for various reasons I've left, you know, either internally or just physically, just not just
Mm,
went and explored other directions in Buddhism, or other things. And but in spite of myself, I'm always back at Jodo Shinshu. And
mm,
this is
mm.
going on since the mid noughties, This is going on since for almost
Yeah.
20 years.
Yeah.
In spite of myself, I come back. I keep coming back. As they say in the 12 step groups, keep coming back. Only I say it works because Amida works it. Not, in 12 step groups they say keep coming back, it works if you work it. This little chant at the end of the meetings, I my para, my take on it is, it works because Amida works it. Keep coming back, it works because Amida works. And you're gonna come back in spite of yourself. So, once you encounter the light, that's what's happened. Once I've encountered, no matter what reason, what barrier, what question, what doubt, what frustration, what time hitting the wall, I come back in spite of myself because of this truth that insists on itself, this mind of the Buddha. That's, just when I think I'm out, it pulls me back in. Right. So, continuing on our discussion, I thought I'd now share you. I actually pulled up the convener's handbook from Lifering Recovery.
Mhm.
Using this, obviously the copyright is Lifering. We're using this for educational purposes. So free use, fair use and all of
Fair
that.
use.
Yeah. So let me share my screen because I think there's a few different things we can draw out of this diagram. See if that works. Yeah. Do you see?
I do.
Excellent. Perfect. So, yes. I also want to make sure yeah, definitely recording. Good, good. Okay. So yeah, this is the kind of diagram I was talking about. And it's kind of a diagram of you know, so and again, I was using this for my food addiction recovery, using their model because just about any model of addiction you can apply to any type of addiction, with maybe some adjustments and things, and obviously changing the wording for yourself. But and I was using it for my, food addiction, or I now just call it gluttony. But what and, because I don't my understanding of Buddhism, and my understanding of samsaric existence, pretty much we're all addicts by virtue of
Mm.
born into samsara.
Mm.
If you're a being in samsaric existence in whatever world you're in, to some extent, you're an addict. You have needs and wants and desires that are never fulfilled, you know, or the aversions that you can never escape from, and that
Mm.
perpetuate your the whole cycle of it, but so I just see addicts in in a Buddhist context as just extreme versions of what we all are just nature of being samsaric beings. Do you see what I mean? So I don't
Mhm.
kind of
Mhm.
see a special different thing. Obviously, everyone's got to come, if anybody's dealing with an addiction, you do what you got to do. Do what you got to do, whatever
Mm.
program you want to use, however you need to do that, and you're a Buddhist, obviously you want to, bring Buddhism where you can, but do whatever you got to do. This is just my own experience with this. I don't, in my own interpretation of how, what an addict is in the Buddhist context, where they're like human pretas, they're the extremists, they're the extreme addicts, everyone else is just a kind of, low key, low grade addict
Mm.
in samsaric existence. Anyway, so having said all that, so in this framework, in their recovery framework, when the addict walks in, the A here can be alcoholic mind or addict mind, and this is the whole mind here, the whole self kind of thing, or quote unquote, mind of the when they come in, and this is what it looks like when they walk into recovery, when they come to recovery, or come to meetings or whatever. This is what it looks like, the addict mind. And then this is the little mind here is the sober mind. And the idea is to decrease the addict mind and increase the sober mind so that it winds up looking more like this after a bit of time of working with things. It looks more like that.
Mm.
Sober
Mm.
mind
Mm.
is dominant, and the addict mind is, or alcoholic mind is this. For me, it would have been food, the food addict mind, or the glutton mind, was reduced from that to, the first diagram to this, for me, and that's kind of how it's worked. So and so going back, so I kind of think of, this came to mind when we were discussing it last time and this time. the kind of, or in my reflections on our, a previous session, um, this came to mind, and I kind of see this as almost like the Hakurai. This mind here is this is the bamboo the age mind, the Hakurai mind. And then there's also the Buddha mind that's coming in, but eventually, and this is this is just, I'm not saying this is this is the teaching. I'm just saying this might be a good analogy for what the transformation that takes place is that, that Hakurai or bamboo mind is greatly reduced and the Buddha mind you know, is more predominant. But you're still, in this scenario, so in the life ring recovery program, you're still, when these two switch, when the egg goes to the smaller egg here in the sober mind, goes up here, you um you still have the addict mind. You see, you still have you still have the addict mind, but the sober mind is much bigger. And the sober mind, as it grows, it gets, as it gets more developed, it's interacting with, they go into this whole thing of, it's quite good actually. Some of the reading, like when I was reading through it again, the description of the addict mind is not unlike the description of the bamboo mind. Do you know what I mean? Which is interesting. But anyway, and they have this diagram where it's like at first, when you come in, they come into meetings, the Hokurai or the addict mind are talking with other addict minds. But the idea is they want to get from that, the interact, to the addict mind talking to the other addict mind to go to the sober mind talking to the other. So you want to go from, grow this the little sober mind to, so I almost feel like that's in this is the interaction in recovery, in the meetings and in the social aspect and in discussions of recovery. This is another analogy that kind of came out of it for me was kind of, the deep dialogue that we do in Jodo Shinshu, jumping over
Mm,
hedge, speaking up, discussing all our questions, barriers, doubts, you know, issues, and that Hakurai mind, you know, because if you're speaking with someone who's a good teacher or a friend on the path who's, is of settled Shinjin, that Hakurai mind, the Hakurai discussion is going to shrink. Do you see what I mean? It's almost, again, this is loose analogy here, but there's something like that going on that the Hakurai mind, is reduced, and the Dharma mind, or the Dharma view mind, the Dharma mindset grows. Do you see what I mean? In that process of the deep Dharma dialogue and deep listening, and through that process, and so you go from this little bit to it's more the it's more the Dharma mind, the Dharma mindset discussing the Dharma
mm,
mindset with
mm.
another. Do you see what I mean? Something like that, some kind of analogy. But anyway, it felt like this came to mind where when you come into, it seems like when my process in my, I don't say my, Amita's process of bringing me along through all this is I came in, the Hakurai mind was huge. The bamboo Hakurai calculative mind was huge, and that's gradually, very incrementally, with some punctuated moments of rapid shrinking,
Mm,
um,
mm.
has gradually, the Hakurai mind is getting smaller and smaller, and the Dharma mindset is gotten bigger and bigger. This, do you see what I mean? And then, so I don't know. There's just something in this analogy that really struck me in the conversations we've been having the last couple of few sessions, and so I thought I'd bring that in here. So anyway,
I mean, I think there's a great deal to that, and I remember on the on the old True Shin Buddhist that the Yahoo mailing group, there's quite a lot of talk about kind of parallels between Shin and the 12 steps thing.
Yeah, yeah.
At one point in my sort of early, when my faith was very unsettled, I had this really ridiculous idea of joining a 12 steps group to somehow get myself closer to Shinjin. Like I'm not an addict, but
I
like,
had
just
exactly
something.
a
Yeah, yeah.
similar thing occurred to me. A similar thought occurred to me when I was thinking about going back at one point. And there's a whole story with that too, but that I'm going to share in a video I've made. But yeah, I had a same exact kind of, maybe it would help with the process of clearing the channels of faith because you do that inventory. You do the fourth step. You know, fearless and thorough inventory of all of your resentments, fears, and conduct. Yeah. But anyway, there's a whole thing on that. Eventually, I'm going to do I want to do a video and some discussions about that. But anyway, and the same thought occurred to me. Please continue though.
Yeah, and look, I never did that, and honestly, I wouldn't
No, same
recommend
here.
doing that. I
I
think
never
that's
actually approached it that way in the end.
Yeah, and I
But
don't think that would be a good because ironically, that would end up actually being sort of very much Hakurai because you're like, okay, I'm going to do
yes,
this, I'm
yes,
going to do the 12
agreed.
steps,
Yeah,
and that'll get me
agreed,
there.
agreed,
But
agreed.
it does also make me
And that's what I
wonder.
was going to do my video on was, this
Yeah,
thought process I went through and just, and discuss that. But anyway, yeah,
yeah,
similar.
and
But I
also
agree. I agree. It would wind up being a lot of.
yeah, well, yeah,
Sorry.
and as an aside, I do wonder if Shin temples have recovery programs. I have a vague memory that they do.
They do. In fact, Kyocam, when we had a couple of discussions about this topic, and you know, my own, experience of addiction,
Mm,
food
mm,
addiction,
mm, mm,
and kind of trying to put that in a Buddhist framework and also a Jodo Shinshu kind of, um, and that was kind of part of the barriers at the time. It's not anymore, but there was some
mm.
things there that were just questions and barriers that needed shifting. So we discussed that, and he actually um, noted he'd actually brought up a website in the video we shared of a Shin Buddhist church that did just that,
Mm,
had
mm.
held recovery meetings. I don't know if it was a 12 step or another type of recovery meeting, but anyway,
Right,
there
so
are
yeah, so that does.
recovery, you know, programs specifically, using the Buddhist. Anyway, but yeah, sorry, go
But
ahead.
when it's specifically Shin, I wonder how they relate that to
Mm, mm,
Shinshu, and I just don't know.
yeah,
But
yeah.
that all being said, there definitely is something to this. I mean, I think this is maybe a handy way to visualize it is that you put it's you have these two minds exactly like you have this thing here, right? And
Yeah.
it's just a matter of which one do you rely on, which one do you treat as the one
Yes.
that is reliable, right? And that doesn't always mean that that's the loudest one or I mean, I think actually most of the time, speaking for myself, it's the Bombu mind is the one that's loudest,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's kind of the main point of reference. But kind of when you look to which one is the arbiter of truth, which one can you kind of lean on? It's
Yeah.
the Buddha mind that's in there, and
Yeah.
that's where the aspect of Shinjin as Anjin comes from for me. Or I mean, I say for me,
Yeah.
I always
Yeah.
qualify it because I can only speak from my own experience, but because it's the peace that comes with knowing that this thing is reliable,
Hmm.
that this thing is Shin, so you can Shin it. To use the sort of different meanings of that word.
Verbing
Um,
and adjectives and nouns and yeah, of shin. Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
yeah, so no, that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, I think, and that's why I was kind of, I've said all this and discussed all this with some tangents to just say that, that's kind of almost how I see, the in terms of importance, certainly this, if you put the Amida Buddha's mind, the Tathagata
Hmm.
mind in here, and the bamboo is in the little circle, as far as prioritizing, as far as what's important, and reliable and true and real, um, it's the Buddha mind, should be the big picture, should be the dominant, the dominant and when I say should, in Shinjin, I would think it would be, in,
Mm.
to some degree, would be a dominant.
Yeah, or even just the sort of perennial awareness of its presence.
Hmm.
Right? Or not perennial, but the
Yeah,
persistent
yeah,
awareness of its
yeah.
presence. Um, but also, and I think what I like about this diagram is and I'm sure there's problems with it I could think about that I thought about it longer,
Yeah.
but what I
Yeah.
do like
Again,
about
I'm
it,
only bringing it as a loose,
mm,
loose
mm, mm, mm.
analogy, metaphor, you know, for what it's worth, kind of thing. I'm not trying to draw any exact,
But where there is
comparisons.
worth in it, what I do like is that that Bombu mine doesn't go, it doesn't disappear,
Yes.
it
Yes.
stays there until you're
Just like
dead.
the attic mind,
There.
when the sober mind becomes large and predominant and is the main focus, the addict mind is still there. Same, you know, in my life, my, I'm still a bamboo, but I would say my focus, my mind, part of the transformation of Amita's working in my life, it seems like my focus on samsaric existence
Mm, mm,
has greatly decreased, and my focus on or kind of just general awareness and reflection on the Dharma world, the the realm of enlightenment, of Buddha's teaching, of Jodo Shinshu, that's become much more the focus
mm,
of my life than my samsaric existence. As far as as far as my focus, and also as far as like my priorities in life, my everything. It's that the Buddha world has become bigger to me, you know,
mm.
in whatever way I can conceive of that, in all its inconceivableness. Anyway, yeah.
But even even in the and it's just like a little nuance I'd want to add because there's this great passage in the Gobinsho where Renya Shonin talks about like even if you don't continually clear the channels of faith, even Shinjin can disappear, and he doesn't mean disappear in that you lose Shinjin because that's impossible, but rather that it sort of disappears from view, right? So very, very,
Becomes
because the first
obscured.
time I read that I was really
Ah,
discombobulated, and I got this commentary on it, and I thought, well, okay, that makes sense,
this
right?
analogy
And
comes back in quite good then, because that
yeah,
can
yeah,
happen
well,
in the
exactly.
recovery process. Someone, who maybe the sober mind became bigger, they kind of start to lose their routine, and they kind of aren't as vigilant and don't do what they need to be doing for their recovery. And so slowly the sober mind becomes obscured, and the addict mind, or in this case the bamboo mind becomes more, and just maybe obscures it, a
Mm,
bit.
mm, mm.
So anyway, sorry.
Yeah, but even when it's obscured, that doesn't mean it's not there. It's
Mm.
just
Yeah,
obscured from
yeah.
sight. And I mean, I think like
That could be
a lot.
what you were talking about too when you said, these thoughts that occur to us. They're just that's it's just obscuration. It's just obscurations of,
Mm, mm,
you know,
exactly.
it's just the bamboo mind doing what the bamboo mind does, But the Buddha mind is still there. The Shinjin, subtle Shinjin is still there. Do you see what I'm saying? In
No,
that,
exactly. And
to
whatever,
bring that.
whatever these sort of these obscurations are, it like sometimes I don't want to say don't take them too seriously because that might seem sort of inhuman in that like, I mean, when you're gripped by anger, then you're angry, right? I mean, sometimes, angry like you just want to cave someone's face in, right? Like, and then you're not thinking about the Buddha,
Yeah.
but it's that they're not as real as the Buddha mind. They're not something you can rely on, right? So even when it's, you know, even when it's obscured from view, it's still there and it's still something that's reliable,
Yeah.
right? And when it comes to sort of the question of radical doubt, that's why well there maybe, maybe don't take it so seriously because it's the mind doing what the mind does. And I mean, that's just I don't like the way I feel like the way I phrased it is like it's advice. I just mean that's what I do.
Yeah.
I just
No,
think,
yeah. I see. Yeah.
yeah,
No, I got that. I
yeah,
got that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's how I received it. So
Right,
yeah,
right. And yeah.
I think it's a
Yeah,
similar thing. So that was the yeah, that's the main thing I wanted to kind of bring in and talk about, in this kind of second half of our of this session. I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna splice them together. But it's yeah, I mean, that was a huge, just all of this was a huge, like I said, in the Dharma mindset, this was there's a big chunk that got moved through our, deep
Mm,
Dharma
mm, mm,
dialogue.
mm.
I feel, um, in this sense, and I think with this fear, this mindset that is a kind of barrier, and of Hakurai, and of this mindset of the secular, sub-rational, as you call it, sphere of that the universe is just devoid of any spiritual content and is just an absurd, pessimistic mess, you know, doing what it does. Um, I think that will just continue to diminish because it has
Mm, mm, mm.
greatly in the last 20 years. You know, its power and its length of time that it kind of the mind go, runs my mind runs with it. Um, it's really my whole mind and body because it's something, like I said, something I really experience and it really sucks.
Yeah.
But it's I think that will be diminished in this similar to the process where, the analogy we're drawing here with this, I think that's part of Amita's process with me is that's shrinking, you know, the power of it is shrinking. And I'm hoping that, eventually.
And what you know, again, I can only speak from in my own experience, but when I remember when I had the conversation where this sort of this light bulb came on for me when I, sort of received this from someone else. This insight. It's that what was really crucial about it for me, right? You haven't vocalized this, or so I don't know if that's really an issue for you, but I just feel I should say it for whoever's listening. I part of the concern for me was like, well, does that mean that there's no shinge in there? Like, is this a doubt that you know what I mean? And the realization that it wasn't, right? Like that you can just rest in the
Mm,
security of your salvation, even with this thing, because this, this doesn't pertain, it's not a doubt pertaining to, logically it is, but existentially, it's not a doubt pertaining to the certainty of your salvation, right? And because like I said in the last, like when we first talked about this, when Shinran Shonen and Ren Shonen talk about doubt, they're talking about something very specific,
mm.
right? They're not, which, like we've said, certain other, breakaway sects of Shin kind of misunderstand that and just kind of take doubt to mean it's sort of,
conflate the two.
yeah,
Yeah,
they
like,
they they, they treat they give it sort of a Christian kind
yeah.
of connotation, almost like
Oh,
in that
there's a
sense of
lot of
doubting the
that in
doctrine.
various ways, in various
Yeah.
ways.
Like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. When I say I don't know about that, I mean, I don't know. But like, at least in this aspect, it's very
Yeah,
evident to me.
yeah,
And that's not what doubt means. So you don't have to have anxiety about that. You can just sort of, okay, these thoughts come up, but you can
yeah.
rest in the certainty of your salvation anyway.
Mhm, mhm.
And that's really, so there's not really, you know what I mean? Like, as much as it sucks when it's, and also, I should say, in my experience, it 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 withers away to the point where I haven't had felt that way in a long time. I haven't had that experience in a long time. But even if it should come up, it doesn't affect the fact that I'm saved. So it's an irritant,
Yeah,
but that's the nature of samsara. It won't be there ultimately when I'm born in the Pure Land in Buddhahood. It won't be there. So, you know,
yeah,
uh,
yeah. No,
um,
definitely. And it's such a huge thing, that I think the important in that in the glossary definition, there's a lot in there that really struck me. One of the sentences where it said, um, Shinjin isn't the means of salvation. It
mm,
is.
Mm,
It
mm.
is salvation. It is your birth in Pure Land. It is